There was a group of teenage friends, for guys and for girls, who went to the same high school. One night, they were having a small party in the house of one of the guys. It was after midnight, and the talk soon turned to scary stories. The friends wanted to test their courage by going to a haunted location. They thought it would be fun to scare themselves by exploring a creepy place in the dark. For years, they had heard stories about an old abandoned school that lay on the outskirts of town. Everyone said it was haunted. None of the teenagers actually believed in ghosts, but they wanted to scare themselves, and it seemed like the old abandoned school was the easiest place to explore. One of the girls had a car, so they drove out to the old schoolhouse and parked outside the grounds. The 8 friends decided that they would explore the school in pairs. The plan was for each pair to walk around the school anti-clockwise. It would take about 10 minutes to circumnavigate the school. The first pair would start off, and when they returned, they would tell the others what they had seen. Then, it would be the turn of the second pair to walk around the school. After a while, pair, they began to grow impatient. Set off, it had been more than 20 teenagers waited by their friends had still not returned. After 30 minutes had passed since the first pair left, the others got tired of waiting. The next boy and girl decided to walk around the school and look for their friends. The others waited and waited, but the second pair failed to come back. The remaining teenagers couldn't understand what was happening. They began to wonder if their friends were playing a joke on them. It had been almost an hour since the first pair had left. The third guy and girl pair nervously set off to try and find their missing friends. They never returned. The guy and girl who remained behind were very nervous. The girl began to cry, and the guy tried to comfort her. Eventually, the guy said, "I'm going to look for the others. If I don't come back after 30 minutes, go straight to the police." After he left, the girl stood alone in the cold and the dark, weeping silently. She waited an hour, but nobody came back. She got into the car, turned the keys in the ignition, and drove to the nearest police station. 4 police officers accompanied the girl back to the school, and, as dawn began to break, they launched a search for the 7 missing teenagers. At first, they couldn't find any sign of them on the school grounds, but then they discovered that the side door of the old, disused school gym was standing open. The police went inside, but it was empty. There was an eerie silence in the air. It was when they looked inside the toilet in the gym that they finally found the missing 7. They were all hanging from the ceiling by their necks. The police questioned the surviving girl, and she swore that she had been telling the truth. The 7 teenagers had gone to the abandoned school to test their courage. They had no reason to commit suicide. However, after spending weeks trying to solve the mystery, the police finally closed the case, saying they could not find any evidence that the teenagers had been murdered. In the end, the incident was explained away as a case of mass hysteria. The police claimed that the 7 teenagers must have been involved in some sort of suicide pact. To this day, nobody in that town will dare to venture out to the old abandoned school after nightfall. A man went to a hotel and walked up to the front desk to check in. The woman at the desk gave him his key and told him that on the way to his room, there was a door with no number that was locked and no one was allowed in there. Especially no one should look inside the room under any circumstances. So he followed the instructions of the woman at the front desk, going straight to his room and going to bed. The next night his curiosity would not leave him alone about the room with no number on the door. He walked down the hall to the door and tried the handle. Sure enough, it was locked. He bent down and looked through the wide keyhole. Cold air passed through it, chilling his eye. What he saw was a hotel bedroom, like his, and in the corner was a woman whose skin was completely white. She was leaning her head against the wall, facing away from the door. He stared in confusion for a while. He almost knocked on the door, out of curiosity, but decided not to. He crept away from the door and walked back to his room. The next day, he returned to the door and looked through the keyhole. This time, all he saw was red. He couldn't make anything out besides a distinct red color. Perhaps the inhabitants of the room knew he was spying the night before and had blocked the keyhole with something red. At this point, he decided to consult the woman at the front desk for more information. She sighed and said, "Did you look through the keyhole?" The man told her that he had, and she said, "Well, I might as well tell you the story. A long time ago, a man murdered his wife in that room, and her ghost haunts it. But these people were not ordinary. They were white all over, except for their eyes, which were red." In South Korea, parents put a lot of pressure on their children to study hard and do well at school. There was one Korean girl whose parents were especially tough on her. They forced her to study 7 days a week, and she was allowed once to go out and have fun with her friends. They even bought her an old school desk so she could study better at home. After a few days, the girl started to have problems. It was not that the subjects she was studying were difficult. Instead, it was the fact that her back would start to hurt whenever she was sitting in her desk for more than a few minutes. The pain became worse and worse, and she couldn't study properly. Her grades began to slip, and her parents started to worry. Her mother took her to numerous doctors, but none of them could find anything wrong with her back. They said that it must be due to stress. The strange thing was that the girl could study without any problems when she was in school. But as soon as she came home and sat down at her desk, she began feeling intense pain in her back. As the girl's grades slipped lower and lower, her mother became desperate to solve the problem. She even started to consult psychics and fortune tellers in the hopes that they could find a cure for what was ailing her daughter. Unfortunately, none of them could help. However, one day the mother was talking to one of her friends. The woman suggested that it could be something to do with the girl's posture. She told the mother to take a photograph of her daughter sitting at the desk. The mother went home that night and took her camera out of the cupboard. The girl sat down at the school desk and the mother snapped a picture. When she looked at the photograph, she was horrified. Her daughter was sitting at the school desk, but above her was another girl hanging by the neck from a noose. The ghostly girl was desperately trying to put her feet on the daughter's shoulders. The next morning, the mother went to the school where she had bought the desk and interrogated the school principal. It turned out that the mysterious girl in the picture was an ex-pupil of the school. She was the girl who had previously sat at that desk. She hadn't been able to handle the pressure of school, and she had hung herself in the classroom a few years before.